first and foremost, we're always going to have fear. We're always going to have challenges. Things, fear is always present. It's just what we do with it. And that's what I call dragons. And there's 5 core dragons that I found. So these 5 fears that we want to make our friends, it's not about slaying our dragon. It's about facing our dragon. It's really getting in touch with what that fear is or challenge that we're facing and loving what is. So the first is imposter, scarcity, value, unheard, and critics. So as business owners, we tend to be navigating, weaving in and out of all of these 5 fears or dragons that get in the way of us building the life and or business or relationship, whatever it is that we dream of.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about facing your dragons and stepping into your power. I'm delighted to welcome Brad Axelrad. Brad is a founding member of the Association of Transformational Leaders and the host of the Face Your Dragon podcast. He works with coaches and consultants to transform struggle into strength, and has been featured in numerous media outlets like NBC Nightly News and PBS television. You can learn more about Brad at his website, faceyourdragon.com, and I'll include a link in the show notes. Welcome, Brad. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
We're here. Too. So let's even go ahead and share that with the people who are listening and people who are watching, that not everything goes perfectly and smoothly. Even when you've done this 100 times or 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times, you can have unexpected obstacles that come up, like construction next door or something, and you have to adjust your schedule. And we have dragons. We have big dragons and we have tiny dragons. And sometimes we even let the tiny dragons just wipe us out. So can you kind of help us figure out some tools? I got dragons. How do I dance with them instead of be destroyed by them?
Yeah, it's a really great way to frame it. I want to speak to the sort of imbalance that happened this morning for me. And like we were joking about, nobody's perfect. No situation's perfect. We have tech issues. We have construction issues. I thought we were going to have to reschedule, as we said. But at the simplest level, like you so brilliantly stated, flexibility and allowing what is really the key. So part of facing our dragon is really that presencing of, first and foremost, we're always going to have fear. We're always going to have challenges. Things, fear is always present. It's just what we do with it. And that's what I call dragons. And there's 5 core dragons that I found, and we can jump right into those, or we could talk about those in a bit.
Let's do it. 5 dragons.
Okay. So these 5 fears that we want to make our friends, it's not about slaying our dragon. It's about facing our dragon. It's really getting in touch with what that fear is or challenge that we're facing, and loving what is, as Byron Katie so brilliant speaks to. So the first is imposter. I'll go quickly through them and then we can dive a little deeper. But imposter, scarcity, value, unheard, and critics. So as business owners, we tend to be navigating, weaving in and out of all of these 5 fears or dragons that get in the way of us building the life and or business or relationship, whatever it is that we dream of. And inside of that, the loving and the flexibility, and knowing that these things will always be there for us. We don't want to get rid of them per se. We want to learn to make friends with them and be nice with them and love them.
I'm going to love my dragons. I'm going to love the feeling that I am an imposter. So, I bring it. I need some more.
Cool. So in the resistance and the expectations of perfection and ease and flow and grace and all that we do, whether we're building a business or in relationship, like I even had a challenge with someone here that I'm staying with this morning just because of the construction and some other things. I had 2 podcasts scheduled. I actually have 4 scheduled today. And I was trying to navigate the construction. So anyway, that said, breakdowns are going to happen. Communication challenges are going to happen. Everything's going to present this opportunity for us to find face and leverage our challenges or our fear into our great work in the world. So most of us at some point have experienced the imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to do this? I think of when I was on NBC Nightly News and I had this group of people here in Orange County. I'm visiting Orange County, California. I currently live in Mexico, and I'm here visiting and importing a vehicle and doing some other things here. But the imposter dragon was so present for me. It's like, who am I to be on stage on this national media outlet sharing this message that was relatively new to me back then in 2007? But I was able to lean into that and make that my gift. All that fear and imposter syndrome could be a gift. That's really the key. How do we leverage this pharmaceutical, this amazing pharmacy in our brain into energy and transform it into power? So how do we do that with the imposter syndrome? That's really it. What is it about yourself that is really unique and different? We're all unique and different. We're all imperfect and challenged. So how do we leverage the imposter in us into our great work in the world? And do you want me to keep going? The second one, scarcity.
No,
yeah,
wait.
Cool.
I don't feel like I have a satisfactory answer for that first one. So here I have this feeling that who am I? I'm nobody. I'm not good enough to do whatever it is that I want to do because I am just, an average Joe. So This is one of my dragons. This is my fear. So now you're saying I need to dance with this and I need to work with it. And maybe some of the things you mentioned is I need to recognize some of my uniqueness, something that I actually have something to give. So what if I think, well, I don't have anything to give? How do I maybe find what those things are and then believe it?
Yeah, really good question.
Oh, but you're really good at XYZ. And I think, no, not really. I'm nothing special. So how do I don't feel like I've conquered this dragon yet. Let's talk about it a little bit more.
Well, again, we may never conquer it. It may always be with us. And that's sort of the paradox of facing and using our fear.
How do I dance with this dragon and not get my toes stepped on constantly?
That's right. Yeah. So how do we love it? And it's really, again, like you've mentioned and repeated back, it's finding that uniqueness in yourself. We all have a genius, as Gay Hendricks talks about, another person on my podcast number 2, brilliant work in The Big Leap. But it's really about finding, having the courage. It's really so much about bravery and courage, looking within, pattern tracing back throughout our life, times that we've been in a powerful position. I don't mean like dominating power. I mean like we've been in our power and we're feeling, and we can tap and tune back into that experience and see ourselves in that and re-anchor ourselves back to that moment using, kind of talking some NLP terms here, but sort of revisiting and reliving that experience in the moment and finding that. And, oftentimes our physiology makes a big difference. But exposure therapy is really one of the biggest ways to find, face, and use any of these fears. If you have a fear of public speaking, and a lot of these come from hierarching sort of, I have a fear of public speaking, I have a fear of charging high fees, I have a fear of getting on camera. These are underneath it. These 5 fears are underneath these surface things. But the point is, if we can expose ourselves to these things that create these deeper emotions within us, then we can start to dance and work with the fear. So if you have a fear of public speaking, ultimately you're afraid you're going to be found out as an imposter, go out and speak a lot. That's the key.
Okay. So now you've given me an action step. It is, I am afraid of doing this. So try it anyway.
Yeah,
and
do a lot of it.
Find out that the thing that we're afraid of isn't going to happen. And the result is not actually going to kill us, even though we probably think that it will.
Yeah.
Okay. So to overcome that imposter, we're gonna do it. And as we do things, then maybe we're going to get better at them. One of my podcast guests a while ago, he said something that was just delightful. He said, I'm not afraid when I speak to any audience on any whatever. He said, because what I'm doing is I'm doing a rep. Like when you go to the gym and you do those workouts, he says, this is a rep. And I'm not going to overanalyze it. I'm not going to worry that I said the wrong thing.
Yep.
I'm not even going to go back and, and think, oh, I could have. He said, I'm going to, today, we're having a conversation and I am doing a rep. And I thought,
brilliant.
I like that. And so
Yeah.
it just took the expectation and just relaxed it.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we were just able to talk. But I really appreciated that insight. Okay. So if I'm afraid of doing something and thinking I'm not good enough, I'm just going to do a rep. I'm going to try it.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And I probably won't die.
Well, you think you will. The ego death is so intense. Oh, man.
I know, right?
It's so intense. Yeah.
Okay.
But I want to plant this. Public speaking is the number one fear above dying.
I know, right?
So
I've heard
we all have it. Yeah.
Right. We would rather be the guy in the coffin than the person speaking at the funeral. I mean, if you think about it, because the speaking is number one and death is two. So, and isn't it interesting that that's so scary? And I think the reason that it's scary is just what you nailed down. If I'm quiet, you won't know. Maybe I can hide that I'm actually an imposter. But if I speak, you might figure it out that I'm not perfect, that I don't know everything or something like that. So, you know what? It's actually okay to not be perfect. And it's actually okay to not know everything. I had another friend who put it this way. He said, we can impress people with our strengths, with our accomplishments, but we influence people through our weaknesses. And so if I'm here and my purpose is, Brad, I want you to be impressed with me. I want you to think that I'm awesome. I'm going to try and be perfect. But if I can just be myself and you see both sides and say the weaknesses, then it can be, you know what? I have weaknesses too.
Yeah.
Actually, it's okay.
I really want to speak to that for a minute. Just public speaking was and still is my biggest fear. And yet I've done it hundreds of times. And most of the time I'm super excited and empowered and it's enlivening and people are loving it. Other times I'm scared to death. And it's okay. Even being this leader, it's like we give ourselves permission, like you're saying, to experience these things. It's okay to have fears. It's okay to fail. We want to fail fast and learn. So anyway, yeah. Vulnerability and authenticity really lets people out of their need to be perfect. Yeah.
What a relief. Doesn't it feel like a burden on your shoulders when you're trying to be perfect? And then it feels like, I'm on the verge of failure every minute.
Yep.
So deep breath. We're going to dance with this dragon. We're going to say, it is okay that I'm afraid. It is okay. And I'm going to try it anyway because I am brave.
That's right. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you talked about your wonderful speaking to this national audience and having those feelings of fear and doing it anyway. And maybe a lot of other people that we look up to and we think they've got it all. It's so easy for them. Who knows? But maybe there's fear and there's that it might be hard for them too.
You're 100% right. I mean, that's having worked with and interviewed or put on my stage throughout the years. I've produced hundreds of live events and interviewed some of major thought leader celebrities on my podcast. Guest number one was Don Miguel Ruiz of the Four Agreements. Gay Hendricks was number two. Ariel Ford, who was Deepak Chopra's, and Debbie Ford's sister, who launched Deepak Chopra. Like, interview and spend a lot of time around these major, powerful thought leaders. And we have very intimate conversations around their life trajectory and their path and all the things they've had to overcome. And we're all in this together. Nobody's immune to these challenges. Miguel's had 2 heart transplants. Most people don't know that. He's literally has somebody else's heart in him again about a year ago, beating in his chest. He's, defying death. Of course, he's going to have some fear. And like he said, fear is completely normal. He says when it becomes irrational, that's the problem. I love when he says his fear in his Spanish. Fear is completely normal. It's when it becomes irrational. Yeah.
And when do you think it is irrational? What makes it? When should I be thinking, maybe I need to rethink that?
Yeah, well, I think the simplest answer where it sort of comes from or derives from is obviously childhood imprinting, whatever that may be. It's mostly from trauma. And as it surfaces, I was with my friend that I'm staying with here, and we were talking on the beach the other day, and talking about how it lives in our body so much. These local areas where it's just living, not just neurologically wired through neural pathways. Of course, it's all interconnected, but it so lives in our body, just where we can touch certain things. And so it's really alive. I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but it is really alive in us. And we get to pattern trace it back to a lot of these traumatic experiences that we need to face. And that's really what the Face Your Dragon brand is about, is having the courage to look at the stuff we're afraid to look at, the childhood trauma, whatever it may be, anything at all, and really having the courage to go back and look there and ferret out what it is that's there for us to embrace again, to learn to love, to forgive, to find patience, to find understanding for. And it's not easy, it's really scary. So we have to have courage. My favorite place to do that is called the Hoffman Institute, the Hoffman Process, hoffmaninstitute.org. And also plant medicine. I'm not sure if you're open to discuss those things, but that's one fast track way to really get in touch with your subconscious very quickly.
Yeah, and are you talking mushrooms or something else?
Well, mushrooms, a big dose of mushrooms will get you there, but in particular, ayahuasca or 5-MeO-DMT or NN-DMT, which is the active ingredient in ayahuasca. But the biggest Face Your Dragon moment I've experienced with anything outside of doing a workshop or a process is 5-MeO-DMT. It's just so incredibly confronting. And it's through that confrontation that we get to pierce the veil of our protective mechanisms and actually get to the subconscious stuff that's there. Super powerful.
Okay. So we've just kind of opened up things a bit. And as we're talking about, we started with talking about the feeling of imposter, idea of fear, and the difference between a rational fear and an irrational fear. And then from there, you jumped to childhood trauma. So let's help make a bridge, because maybe not everybody understands the connection between our fears and our childhood trauma. But when I have something where I have a fear that maybe is larger than the current situation would merit, like the thing that I'm going through really should be a molehill, but in my head it's a mountain. That is a sign that there's something deeper. I'm dealing with my current situation, whatever it may be. But what is really bothering me is there's something that happened in the past that this is maybe reminding me of. Like if we have a sliver in our body and the sliver didn't come out, and there's something that touches that area of that wound. It might just be a touch, but because I have a sliver inside of me, oh, that hurts. Oh, that hurts. That hurts so bad. And it hurts for real. It really hurts me.
Yeah, it really does.
So now you're suggesting that in order to find those things, we have lots of different tools. And you've mentioned tools that I've never heard of before. And we have all these integrated parts. We have our physical, our mental, our emotional, our social, our spiritual. And we can tap into some of these tools or these tools to help affect and influence some of the other things. So I don't know how deeply we'll get into those, but I'll make sure to include your information so that if someone says, you know what, that tool, that when you just said that, man, I just thought, I need to know, I got to know what this is. Then I'll be able to know where to come to get to you so that they can learn more. So is it okay if we go to number 2? You mentioned 5, and I didn't have my pencil ready fast enough, so I didn't have them all ready. So what was number 2?
Scarcity.
Dragon. Scarcity. Ooh, let's talk about scarcity. And what does that mean?
Well, it depends on context, but typically in the business context, let me back up and state that people will say, well, Brad, how do you help people face their dragon? And my short answer is, well, I help them build a business. And they go, oh, okay, I get it. Just because of all the things that come up in building a business, there's so much to do, and marketing and lead generation being one of the biggest challenges for most business owners. Scarcity can be lurking regularly. And that's essentially, that when you put yourself out there and bring all this together and build your business, you put it out to the world and, maybe people don't buy, they don't like what you're offering. And that could lead you into financial fears. And obviously financial challenges are one of the biggest triggers for most people. It brings up everything else. So scarcity can definitely show up for a lot of folks. Yeah, I mean, even me on occasion, it kind of, money comes and goes. We make a lot of money sometimes, other times like, well, where's it at? Like, that's pretty standard as an entrepreneur. We have these ebbs and flows of abundance and scarcity.
I'm glad you mentioned abundance. I was going to ask, is there an alternative to a mindset of scarcity?
Well, I've come up with sort of the opposites of these, and essentially abundance being the opposite. That's exactly right. It's having an abundance mindset. But how do we break through the limiting beliefs or the energetics that are in the way from us feeling abundant? And, again, oftentimes it's simply just putting our chest up, feeling the abundance, experiencing the abundance. Of course, we all got to experience the law of attraction wave that took the personal development and the world by storm. It's like, there's so much power in that, really feeling abundant and experiencing joy and gratitude and peace and humility and gratitude. When all the best things happen to me in my life, this is a really important thing I want everyone to really understand. We don't want to make it about me. Like, I manifested that. I created that. Look what I did. The big shift that can like create massive ripples and opportunity is to find absolute humility and reverence and gratitude for the opportunity. Like, that's the big shift. It's shifting from look what I did, look how amazing I am, to wow, thank you. I don't know how or where this is coming from or how this is happening, but my humility and gratitude are far bigger than my ego's need or my intellect's need to say, I did this. I'm making this happen. It's just find the magic in things and say, wow, this is incredible. This is beautiful. I'm honored. Thank you for choosing me to be on this ride. It's deeper than gratitude. It's really reverence and humility.
I love that. So the antidote to my feeling of scarcity is humility and gratitude. And we can do that in kind of a micro example or make it bigger. Let's say I'm feeling like I don't have enough money in my bank account, or I don't have this, that, or the other. And I can focus on that. And my brain thinks scarcity, scarcity, scarcity. But if I think, but I do have my health, and I do have my house, and I do have, and start listing some of the things that I do have. I have clean running water, which we all take for granted.
That's right. That's
a really big deal. And we have sanitation, and we have garbage takeout, and we have, things that are just, there's so many things that we do have. And the cool thing is, when we focus on those things, then we can be happier now. So even though maybe my bank account really isn't doing fabulous, but I can still be happy while it's growing rather than be miserable until it's
very true.
That makes sense?
It does. What's also incredibly important and true is massive action. We need to, not always, we need to push in the masculine sometimes, pull in the feminine sometimes, dancing between those two energies, the push, the pull. But ultimately, I found that the universe and people and things respond when I'm really like, you know what? This is going to be a 1 month push. I'm going to work my tail off this month. Things seem to happen. Luck manifests. What's that saying? When preparation meets opportunity or something, that's luck or something, some saying like that. It's really true.
I was thinking the harder I work, the luckier I get, but
that's also true. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So we're gonna overcome our scarcity by gratitude and by humility. And what was our third dragon?
Value.
Value. Valuing what?
Yep. So that you'll never have the courage, to charge what you know you're worth. It's sort of owning I know that I have this transformation to provide, and I own that. And if some people say no because the price is too high, that's okay. This is what I charge. I'm totally okay with that. But I'll give an example. The times I've made the assumption, and assuming is always a bad idea, especially in this situation, that someone might not have the money to pay me. Did that a couple years ago. Again, it's the last time I've done it since then. And it was like, oh, wow, I don't know if this person really has the funds to work with me. So let me lower the price a little bit and make it a little easier for her. And she renewed with me. But the point is, money was not an issue for her. I was totally assuming that. So never make that assumption and lower your fees to get the deal. That's kind of it. But also owning, that I've done the work and I value myself and I value what I provide to people. And just really standing in that value and loving yourself again with humility and gratitude. It's not this ego thing. It's really just, I want to keep reiterating the power in that.
So the value we're talking about is the value of me, that I have value and that I am worth it. And I am worthy of success, and I am worthy of wealth, and I am worthy of appreciation. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of fill in the blank. What is it that we want? And that makes all the difference.
Beautiful.
And that goes back to what we talked about on the first dragon, where if we don't have that, chances are there's something down beneath that we need to take a look at. Why don't you think you have value? Why don't you think you're worthy of love or success or whatever the thing happens to be? Because there's probably a reason. And if we can find it, it's a reason that we think that way, not a reason that means we really are.
It's a good distinction. Yeah, I think that I know that when we can pattern trace back to these experiences, in particular in our childhood, we'll find where we felt like an imposter, what happened in that scene, that situation. When did I feel scarcity? When did that happen? I think of my parents having financial challenges, and that sort of can get imprinted bioelectrically, right? And neurologically, physiologically, biochemically. But we can go back to that time and find grace, compassion, love, try to resolve that a little bit.
I love that. And I had a friend who put it this way: from being in a place of feeling worthless, he said, I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. It says that was something, a place where I could start. He said, if I tried to say, oh, I'm awesome, I'm this, I'm that,
right,
it was too big. It felt like too much of a lie.
Yeah.
Couldn't go there. But he could start with, I am the kind of person who is kind to myself, and say it hundreds of times a day until that felt safe. And then he could take it to the next level. So excellent.
Yeah, it makes real quickly, it makes me think of the emotional guidance scale by Esther Hicks. I haven't thought or talked about that in so long. But I was in my storage the other day and I saw the book Ask and It Is Given. That was one of the biggest sort of trajectories for me. And Ask and It Is Given, the emotional guidance scale. Taking too big of a leap on that scale is exactly what you're saying. Going from despair to joy is just way too big. So we need to increment up and it's really good. It's been a long time.
Absolutely. And I think we can heal and transform as fast as we will allow.
Also
but
true.
Sometimes, it's baby steps, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Baby steps. Okay. All right. So what's dragon number 4?
Unheard. So that your tribe won't get you or understand the difference you can make for them. So again, many layers to all of these. But at the simplest level, who am I to share this message? Nobody's going to get it. Why even do it? And then ultimately that leads to like, oh my gosh, if I speak, like my throat chakra is closed. If I do speak, it's not going to land with anybody anyway. So why even share my message? Why share my voice out in the world? It's just not going to resonate with anyone anyway. So back to that sort of self-love, self-esteem. I'm unworthy. And again, where did we learn this? mommy, daddy, surrogate parents, whatever that looks like, typically.
That's huge. And I think all the same principles that we've discussed apply to this as well. So what's dragon number 5?
Critic. So this has a couple layers that if you do achieve the dream, you'll be criticized or your personal life will suffer. Meaning, you put yourself out there, you're doing all these pieces for a coaching business, a thought leader business, and you do a post and you get all these critical responses. You know, the keyboard warriors are responding, or your family, which is another big one. You know, go get a job. You shouldn't build a business. You know, go get a job, get a degree, get a job, that kind of mentality. We have that both inner critic and external critics in social media and from family members in particular that think we're crazy half the time and don't know what we're up to. So having the centeredness and the commitment to our transformation in the world and our purpose will guide us through all these critics. That's the first sort of part of it. The second part is that if we do build the business that we're so excited to have, we might get buried in work and not understanding how to outsource or build systems or build team or raise capital. All those things will prevent us from ultimately building and living the life that we really want. So we criticize ourselves, others criticize us. Yeah.
That
good fun.
Huge. And that does happen. I like to
totally does.
Warriors.
Yeah.
How even if we are able to conquer the inner critic and have the courage to stand up, to speak out, to do something, we have a zero guarantee that we won't have somebody criticize our efforts. So how do we survive that? How are we resilient when critics happen?
Yeah, boy, it's, you can see how all these things are so woven together, right? It's really that sort of self-esteem, self-love, self-respect, staying focused and, ignoring the noise. And it's hard, again, we need to be easy with ourselves. We need to be flexible and trust that we're going to weave in and out of these moments in different chapters, different days, different hours of the day. I'm sure you've seen this as an entrepreneur, anyone listening and watching this, but we think the entrepreneur path is like this, but it's all over the place, right? So life is like that, and having the ability to flow and trust and get crunchy sometimes, forgive ourselves when we get crunchy and tight and angry or sad or whatever. It's really about that self-forgiveness, compassion for others, trying to find the challenge and the breakdown and understanding that we're all battling our own stuff. It's not easy. And sometimes hindsight is 20/20 when we come out of that. The goal is to shorten that refractory period from to overwhelm and rushing of all the hormones to getting back to neutral or center. And it's not easy, but that's the key. Give ourselves permission to be in the chaos, even for a minute, but shortening the refractory period and forgiving ourselves and others faster than longer, not holding grudges. And yeah.
Okay. So I'm thinking of like a ball dropping, that ball and the resilience of coming back up and having that swing from the drop to the coming back up to being okay again, working toward shortening the length of time and maybe even the depth of the pain, because stuff is going to happen. And I guess, all right, so my job is to work on building myself back up and getting back to center and becoming okay, and to see how quickly I can do it. So maybe when I'm starting, it might be a really big, someone said something mean and someone criticized me. And then it might take a while to gather my courage up and then say, you know what, actually, I'm okay. And I think the message that I have to share is worth it.
Yep.
And so when the next person says something, I think, that hurt. And I'm sorry it didn't work for you. But guess what? It worked for this person. And so what I'm doing still has value. Now, as we're listening to these dragons, it sounds very much like you are preparing kind of an army of of thought leaders, of people who are
Mm-hmm.
able to bring together a message and to be able to help change the world. And creating these leaders, we have to be able to dance with these dragons. And I like your comment that we cannot conquer them. These are going to be, they're real and they're part of life. But we can work within reality and still be happy and successful and to be okay. And I think these principles not only apply to thought leaders and coaches, but also just to people who are doing anything. That if we can work through these things and become more resilient and able to bounce back faster, we're going to be, whatever life throws at us, we're going to be okay.
I'm loving being on the other side of this, hearing filtering it through you and having it being echoed back. And I'm over here just taking it in and basking in it. I could add more, but I'm selfishly enjoying hearing you speak about it.
Brad, is there anything else you want to make sure we cover before we close today?
Well, look, if the feather's been tickling you for a while and you've been ignoring the feather, eventually a brick's going to hit you. You guys may have heard this analogy: a brick will hit you upside the head. If you ignore the brick, you can just get kind of, whoa, that was pretty intense, but I'm back. And then you just keep ignoring the pain from the brick. Eventually a Mack truck's going to come take you out. So wherever you align religiously or spiritually, God, the universe, spirit is always communicating with us. Some would say it's intuition. That's definitely a part of it, but there's this communication happening. And if we can slow down enough and remove the distractions and addictions and whatever that may be, excessive alcohol, sugar, stress, anger, all these things, if we can really clear our path and open the channel to really listen and not ignore the feather or ignore the brick, we're going to be in much better shape to step into our power and really give our gifts, because we're going to be just alive in our purpose without polluting ourselves with all these things, even too much news, whatever it is, right? And I can sometimes get into the news. It's pretty intense right now. So that's it. Just removing addictions and distractions and staying focused on your commitment to the transformation you provide, ignoring all the critics, all the noises, all these other dragons, like loving them. But like, we got work to do here as light workers, as transformational leaders. This is our time. That's it.
I like that. I have a little image in my mind of I'm dancing with these dragons and I need to clear the dance floor. And part of the dance floor is in my head. And so if I can clear things out and have that pathway, then we can make something really quite beautiful. So thank you, Brad, for visiting with me today. It's been delightful.
It was an absolute honor. I'm so happy to be here. It was really great. And I got lots of healing from you. So thank you.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Henry Ford. He said, "One of the greatest discoveries a man makes, one of his great surprises, is to find that he can do what he was afraid he couldn't do." Today, I invite our listeners to face their dragons and step into their power. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for listening. Please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. And if you'd like to heal your life from the inside out, there is a free video series at hopeforhealingfoundation.org. Just click on the Free Stuff tab. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.